the FMCC webinar, What Metallica and Justin Bieber Can Teach Us About Innovation Within Facility Management. I'm Joshua Amos, the IFMA liaison for the FMCC. Next slide, please, Chris. I do want to let everyone know they have been muted for audio quality, and this presentation is being recorded. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, and we'll go over them during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. Next slide. Chris, if you could go ahead and click onto the part, there we go. Okay, the FMCC provides many services to the FM community, such as Ask the Expert, Find a Consultant, Locate a Speaker, and online educational resources. You may find more information at their website, fmcc.ifma.org. Next slide, please. And we'd like to take this time to thank our sponsors. And the next slide, please. Okay, I do want to go over a few more items. At the end of the webinar, there will be a survey that comes up. I do encourage you to take the survey, as the FMCC board does look at the feedback that you leave. And also there will be a few polls during this presentation. Again, I want to remind you about Q&A at the end of the presentation. We will go over those and make sure you type them in to the chat box. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. Okay, these are the learning objectives. Chris, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Joshua, and it's a pleasure to be here. Tonight we're going to talk about, or today we're going to talk about Justin Bieber and Metallica, and it's a very strange topic to cover with respect to facilities management, but it's really there to give us a tool to learn a little bit more about innovation. So this webinar is round about gaining an understanding of what innovation is within facilities management, helping you to benefit from some of the principles of innovation and how we can learn from other industries. Also, it's there to encourage you to identify ways to improve your own innovation results and to share some ideas within the marketplace. At the end of it, I'm going to share also with you some tools to help you plan your own innovation journey moving forward. As an individual, I work with a lot of organisations in the FM provider marketplace, so I do apologise. This presentation is slightly skewed towards FM providers, and it is a lot of the examples are around about the UK marketplace, but they're equally important for in-house FM providers and global markets. I'm also, I must caveat, I'm a huge fan of Justin Bieber. So that takes us on to our first poll. So I can gauge a little bit about the audience who are tuned in tonight. I'd like to ask you just now to give us an example of what your music preferences are. So if you can take a second, what I'd like you to do is just have a look at the poll that should pop up on your screen and let me know what your music tastes are. Okay. Oh, that's disappointing. We have a lot of Metallica fans. Well, that's not disappointing, but that's good to see. That has absolutely no relevance whatsoever to the webinar. It was just to try and make me feel better about being a Justin Bieber fan, and I have to say it failed miserably. But nevertheless, let's continue. Now let's have a look at the music industry, and particularly Justin Bieber and Metallica, but let's have a look at a tale about relevance. Now, I have this quote on the wall of my office I look at quite a lot, and this is about organisations needing to keep delivering value to the stakeholders, or consumers, building occupiers, end users in the case of FM, to remain important and needed. This last expression, last word, needed. And to give you an example about this relevance, I'd like to talk a little bit about the music industry. Now, for decades, the music industry has been particularly good at innovation. It's looked at new ways to distribute music globally. It's looked at developing markets overseas. It's looking at the moves of UK talent overseas, so the likes of Beatles, and Josh and I were speaking earlier on about One Direction, how Justin Bieber has globally been a huge success. The record industry has done incredibly well at marketing and selling to an expanding marketplace. It has used new technologies to do that. It's went from vinyl to reel-to-reel recordings to 8-track recorders to cassette tapes and onto CD-ROMs or CDs. And it's done all of that. It's expanded its growth in the marketplace, and it's had year-on-year growth. It's a very stable business, or at least it was until the year 2000. In the year 2000, completely unrelated to the music industry, a group of college students got together to look at new technology, led by an individual called Sean Fanning. They set up an organization or a tool called Napster. Now, in the year 1999 to 2000, Napster was a technology that allowed you to electronically distribute data anywhere in the world using the internet. And what was incredibly successful is that music files were of such a size that it would allow the rapid distribution of music files anytime, any place, 24 hours a day, wherever you had internet access. And Napster grew hugely overnight. The technology, the peer-to-peer data technology, allowed music files to be shared from America to from the UK, right the way through to Australia, Africa, anywhere with an internet connection. Now, what this meant is that music was being shared illegally. And the record industry, far from being completely oblivious to digital downloads, had chosen up until the year 2000 to completely ignore it. They were content that the industry that they had was strong. They were selling very successfully into all places in the world. They had a very successful, strong strategy, and the growth was continuing upwards. Now, this graph, which was presented to the US courts as part of the court case against Napster, looked at the continued growth that was expected by the record industry, and that's the dotted line you can see at the right-hand side. Instead, when Napster came around in the year 2000, actual sales plummeted. People failed to purchase music. The record industry today is still struggling to recover from that. What it did is it had a series of amalgamations, mergers, acquisitions. A lot of labels shut down, a lot of artists stopped recording music because economically it wasn't viable. And Napster had started a huge movement in downloading digital music. Consumers, end users, listeners wanted music to be sent to them 24 hours a day wherever they were. Now, there were two extremes to this. One, for all you Metallica fans out there, were Metallica. Metallica in the industry were incredibly successful heavy metal band. They were touring globally. They were doing incredibly well in the mid-90s. They had some great album releases and continued success. Now, in the year 2000, what they did is they found a studio recording of their album that was yet unreleased into the marketplace, being distributed via Napster, and Metallica went a little bit crazy. They went out, they engaged lawyers, and they sued everybody. They sued Napster. They sued over 350,000 individual fans that had downloaded music, and worse, they sued universities which were providing the networks that were allowing some of their students to download illegal music through Napster. There was a massive backlash against Metallica, and a huge number of individuals saw them as being empire building, money grabbing. They were making massive wealth out of the industry, huge amounts of money, and yet they were coming after the fan base. They were really looking aggressively at how they could stop fans downloading music illegally. Even to this day, they are used as an example of how not to engage new technology. So they really rebelled against it and used their size and their might to try and constrain the growth that digital downloads would have, to try and prevent its growth into the marketplace through legal means. Now, in contrast to that, in 2008, Justin Bieber was a yet undiscovered young musician. He appeared in a number of small talent shows in his local area, and his mother recorded them in videos and uploaded them into this new social media network called YouTube. And he didn't have a huge number of followers, but over a series of months, he uploaded another video and another video, uploaded 12 videos of him doing some performances. And at that time, a music producer and manager by the name of Scooter Braun in 2008 was looking at the opportunities for some artists that YouTube would offer as a new medium, and accidentally clicked on a link that showed Justin Bieber singing some songs. After he looked at the videos, listened to this young musician performing through the music videos that had been uploaded unprofessionally on YouTube, taken by camera phones and small video recorders, Scooter Braun jumped on a plane to Toronto and immediately went to see Justin Bieber and signed him up as a client. The opportunity that Justin Bieber had was to take advantage of a growing market base that were using YouTube as a distribution means for music. And that was something that in the music industry had largely been not taken advantage of. It had been ignored. As a child star, a child musician, the route to success at that time was to come through an alliance with a channel such as Disney. It was to look at a television program or some other Cartoon Network channel and to take a child star through to performance and a recording artist, much the same way as another example like Miley Cyrus is today. They came through television and into music. This was an unheard of route, a child star coming straight into the music industry as a mass-produced singer and performer that only had a track record on YouTube. And the growth was instant, phenomenal. I can't even say phenomenal, I do apologize, but it was huge. The demand for music in this new medium really propelled Justin Bieber overnight to a massive success globally. And that was part of Justin Bieber's problem. The demand for his talent, his time, his performance took their toll on a young performer. And today we're starting to see some recovery after some really negative press about Justin Bieber. Now seems to be getting through that. But you have two extremes here. We have Metallica, who tried to prevent new technology, and we had Justin Bieber, who took advantage of new technology. Technologies that disrupted heavily a very strong industry, which was the music industry. And that is where the similarities lie within facilities management. Because as an industry, we are performing well globally. We have growth, we have year-on-year growth, we have predicted continued growth in global marketplaces. There are opportunities worldwide for FM services. But at any time, we could have a disruption, a technology, an idea, a concept, a change principle that can change the way that we operate and work as facility managers. And as an organization, as an industry, we have a duty to end users, building occupiers, to consider the impact of that, to continue the theory of relevance. We must remain relevant and needed within the marketplace. And so this webinar is round about some of the tools that we can use to enhance innovation, to really remain relevant and to make an impact on our contracts just now. Now, we're going to talk about innovation in various ways. There is no right and wrong way to talk about innovation. We're going to look at incremental. We're going to look at small, minor changes and enhancements at one end of the spectrum. And we're going to look at massive changes like Napster had on the record industry. On the other side, we're going to look at these radical or disruptive types of innovations where there's threats and opportunities that lie for facilities management. But it's important first that we have a look a little bit about the definition of innovation, because often it's used in technical journals and press. It's this all-in phrase that really means a lot, but means nothing. You have to look at the principles behind it. And there are so many definitions, and I've captured a few of them here, but there are hundreds, if not thousands more. The one that I quite like is that innovation is about people creating value for stakeholders by implementing new ideas. And the reason that I like this is it captures so many things about facilities management. It's not just about pounds and pence and dollars and cents. It's about people. It's about the suppliers that are affected and involved within facilities management, the employees we have working for us, the customers, the end users of facility management, the consultants involved in supporting the industry, and the individuals and organisations we partner with. And it's about creating value, and this is not just about financial value, this is about more than cost savings. It's about bringing competitive advantage to the industry and suppliers. It's about improving safety. It's about making things easier, quicker, and improving customer satisfaction and building user and end user satisfaction. And it does that by involving not just one or two individuals, but by involving all the stakeholders. It's about involving the suppliers, the employees, the customers, the industry as a whole. It's about involving government, investors, the communities around us, the shareholders, and again the consultants to really drive innovations and improvement to get new thinking into the industry. And innovation is driven by ideas. It starts with an idea, a concept, a principle, driven by the need to find more efficiencies, or inspired by complementary industries. And we'll talk some more about them later. Or it's an evolution, it's a step different from what we do today to improve what it is that facilities management is. Or it's an entirely revolutionary concept. It's removing the requirement for things like facilities management altogether by changing the way we operate and function as a business. But it is important. Some research that was done by Standard & Poor on the Standard & Poor 500 showed that in the 1920s the average lifespan of a business was 67 years. In 2012, the same research was carried out and it found that the average lifespan of a business was only 15 years. In less than 100 years, the lifespan of a business had changed by over 50 years. The longevity of a business, for whatever purpose, was rapidly diminished. And that was reinforced by some thinking that was done in the Financial Times and questionnaires and surveys about corporate chiefs of large organisations in the UK, who said that they were over-reliant on fading revenue streams and business models. And they feared that by 2017, what was making them money, what was being successful for them today, would no longer be the case in only a few short years. What also caused some concern here is there's some thinking and some research done by Clayton Christensen, often thought by many as being the guru for innovation, looked at the impact of business growth within organisations in current day, and calculated that if a company stalls in terms of growth, the chances that it will be able to re-accelerate, will be able to improve its position is only 6%. So if a business grows and grows and grows, then finds itself in a plateau position and in a decline in its business, it will find it incredibly hard to recover from that. And even a business that is doing successfully, less than 10% of businesses will be able to continue that advantage over a period of time. So this is all about being relevant. Now for facilities management, that's normal. We expect to adapt and change. We have some very clever individuals constantly enhancing what we're doing. And it's important in industry and the customers that we have, because the whole marketplace is recognising the value of innovation. In the modern workplace, a lot of research that's been carried out is showing that face-to-face communication and collaboration is a critical success factor in achieving innovation. Discussion, collaboration, addressing challenges, concerns and problems are really driving through new ways of working. The work environment has been highlighted as a key component to making things better. and that's changing away from often stale work environments into areas that allow us to collaborate and to improve communication better. And for the customers and end users of buildings, this is a key component for us as FM professionals to consider. How can we look at workplace changes to facilitate innovation communication within our client organisations? Just now, we're not doing hugely well at this. Nearly 60% of business leaders in large UK companies, and it's very similar overseas, they admit that they're failing to take advantage of innovation. They're failing to change the way that they operate, improve, and prepare themselves for future market challenges. Some research that was done by Sheffield Hallam as well showed that innovation, when selecting a new partner, a new supplier, whether that be through facilities management or through any other service, procurement experts rated innovation as the second most important choice, with 86% of them saying it was a key consideration after price. So innovation, how we improve over a period of time, is a key consideration for any supplier engagement within the industry. And in live operational contracts, facilities management projects, 80% of facilities managers are measured on performance against budget. It's a cost consideration. And innovation is not just about cost, but we need to make improvements. We're continually being driven to reduce cost, to improve our cost position. And this is driven through innovation changes through the workplace. There are a number of research studies to show that innovation is pivotal to the workplace. We need to change the way that we look at buildings and office spaces and how workers communicate and engage. And there's a whole series of research studies and statistics that show that we need to change our philosophy about the workplace. And as FM professionals, we have to facilitate innovation, not only within our own organisations, but that within our client organisations, the workplaces of end users and building occupiers all around about us. And things don't just stand still, things are constantly changing. And again, they're changing for a whole series of reasons, some of which are easy to identify, others less so. Some research that's been done showed 4 main areas driving innovation and change within any environment. So from an FM perspective, changing business environment. We are now no longer looking at in-country FM provision. We're now looking at global service provision. We're looking at serving customers not only in the US or UK or the countries in which we operate, but really globally. We are now almost looking at not country-specific strategies, but organisational strategies. How do we serve a customer? How do we serve a customer that is present on 4 continents? How can we service in the US as well as we can in India, in China, and Australia by taking on different cultures and working practices? The business environment is changing. It's easier to do global business. And as FM providers, there is a demand for us to keep up with that pace of change. Our customers and their needs are changing. Those that use and consume facilities management really want something different. They want changes to the workplace for all the reasons we mentioned before. They want to look at enhancements, improvements. They want to get more out of their workforce. And for us as facilities managers, we have a responsibility to deliver and facilitate those changes, or else somebody else will. Other organisations, whether they be IT driven, whether they be interior design driven, unless we work together, as long as facility management drives changes, we've got this challenge of relevance. We may no longer be needed in the next 5 to 10 years if we don't meet our changing customer needs. And competition is growing faster and larger than any time in history of FM. We're looking at competition now from property organisations who have embraced facilities management as part of an in-house service delivery. We're looking at technology companies superseding the processes and procedures that have been established within FM for a number of years. We're looking at threats and challenges not only from companies out with FM, we're also looking at challenges from the aggregation the acquisition and merger deals that are currently going in place. We're looking at some strong competition from large companies that can discount, that can really carry costs globally, right the way across the server streams. And unless we're able to respond to that, we may find ourselves struggling or consumed by some of these other organizations. And a large part of innovation in FM is driven by technological advances. In a research study that was done by Ernst & Young in 2014, one of the expressions in here really grabbed me, and that is all companies are in the technology business. As FM providers, we are all in the technology business. We are not just looking at maintaining workplaces, we are in the technology business. And this is becoming more important in how we conduct ourselves. So for example, Microsoft and its California campus is now using robots for security. It's removing individuals as security experts. It's bringing in robots to constantly patrol the grounds in which they operate to make sure that there's no intrusion. Robots are becoming cheaper. It's able to automate many functions such as assembly, food preparation, food production, and to look at various elements of facilities management, manual processing. The food industry is looking at robotics far more, not only for food preparation, but for distribution. Trucks and lorries in the US are currently being trialled on the highways that don't have any drivers. This is mass amounts of produce being moved across country by driverless trucks and wagons. Now that's got the potential to operate 24 hours a day or as long as the fuel will last without any driver issues, far more reliably and safer than having humans driving and controlling the equipment. So there is a big drive for this technology. Hospitals are routinely using it now. Most modern hospitals are embracing robotics in one way to distribute equipment and resources and consumables round about the hospital locations. In Glasgow, near where I live, we've just built a new hospital with a whole infrastructure round about supporting robotic porters. Hospital records, pharmaceuticals, consumables are all delivered via underground tunnels by robotics, far quicker and far more efficiently than human porters can do. Now the concern and the opportunity is fairly significant for FM. There is a threat here to how we would normally conduct facilities management. There's also opportunity by embracing it early. A report that was done by McKinsey last year suggested that by 2020 we could save $9 trillion globally by using automation, robotics, and artificial intelligence in most business functions. Now there are some things that we just can't do without human intervention. But think about it. Cost is the main driver for facilities management. $9 trillion in wages can be saved by 2020 and beyond by using automation technology. We are no longer facilities businesses. All companies are in the technology business. So what's driving innovations? We've talked about some of these elements. For every business, these four elements come together in different ways. And for one organization, it may be entirely different than it is for the organization that you currently work within. And we produce routinely some of these landscape reports for some of our clients. We look at the challenges in the short term, mid-term, and long term that affect not only our client businesses and their drivers for conducting business, but also what affects us as service providers. So we look at things like the political pressures, the economic drivers, the social elements, all these external areas which we have little control over or we can influence very little about. This external environment is really driving how we will conduct our business tomorrow. And the challenge with FM is that we've based our experience on what has already happened. We have built on the strengths of FM in the past to give us something which is incredibly powerful today, incredibly successful. But we don't always recognize what will be. What is happening tomorrow what is happening next year, what is happening in the next decade. We're not particularly good at that as an industry. And we have some speculation about workplace, but very few companies that we work with is actually doing anything differently today to take recognition of the changes and the challenges that are likely to happen. They are conducting, many of our clients, innovation in some ways. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to compartmentalise that to understand where the strengths and weaknesses are when it comes to innovation. And for us, we've identified two main categories: enterprise-driven and operational-driven. And there's various subcategories such as organisational structure, how governance is carried out, how we communicate and pass down strategy, our business models, and how we deliver things into the marketplace, how we staff as an organisation. And in an operational perspective, the technology that we embrace, the processes that we routinely use to deliver facilities management, the delivery models in terms of how we use engineers and cleaners and security guards to provide the services required by our end users. We're good in some areas, not so great in others. So for example, in our service delivery models, we're actually quite good. We continually enhance the way that we deliver service to improve quality. We look at really serving the needs of our customers. We look at end user satisfaction, customer satisfaction, some contracts better than others, some clients better than others, some individual employees better than others, but we're actually quite good as an industry at looking at customer service. Areas we're not particularly good at, we could do with improving our view of technology. We've got some use of it, but it actually has far more potential to impact. And remember, we are in the technology business. Strategy, we tend to continue looking at what was rather than what will be. Our business model remains unchanged. Our finance models, how we are driven and funded hasn't changed. The growth potential, the markets, the competitors, we don't really look at that in a strong way. We look at it based on past experience and not on future potential. So in organisations, FM organisations, how do we innovate? Well, looking at this spectrum, incremental on the left and transformational on the right. By incremental, these are small minor step changes. So these are usually things around about quality. How we tweak the existing services that we've got, how we make marginal improvements to what we're already delivering. Sometimes we'll veer into superseding existing services. We'll look at ways that we can do things easier. So that might be, for example, maintenance. We might look at more condition-based maintenance techniques such as thermal imaging or acoustic vibration analysis or oil analysis as opposed to standard calendar-based maintenance. So we'll look at service improvements in that way to try and deliver cost benefits and resilience benefits. In some cases, we also look at replacements. We actually look at services or technologies that removes the requirement for us to deliver things. And I mentioned hospitals before. We might look at using robotics in hospitals to distribute materials and consumables round about an infrastructure as opposed to having humans do that. We might look at security guards being done by robots. The end requirement is largely the same, but how we do it is fairly significant. We replace one way of doing it with another. And in the right-hand side is transformational, huge changes that affect entirely how we do business. And in FM, that might be changing from an office-based work environment to entirely mobile, agile working, working in cafeterias and collaborative workspaces and home working, entirely removing the requirement for us to look after physical infrastructure and having everything IT-driven. So how we innovate just now, we tend to be more focused on quality and service improvements and largely complacent when it comes to replacement and disruptive technologies. Now, is this right? Well, there's a lot of thoughts around about how we should innovate and where we should focus our attention on. And a lot of research from multiple different sources suggest, and only suggest, that this should be our balance. We should spend 65% of our effort on improvements, doing the same things in a better way. We should be looking at marginal improvements and increases. 25% of our time we should be looking at doing better things. How can we replace a component of what we deliver by something new and more efficient? And this, as I said, is round about things like how can we use robotics to distribute equipment as opposed to using human porters. And in the right-hand side, around about 10% of our effort on innovation, research and development should be looking at entirely new opportunities, superseding what we do today with something new, or looking at entirely different markets altogether by transferring the skills that we've got into different sectors. Now, if we superimpose what we currently do against the recommended amount, we can see we currently do too much of the minor quality and service improvements, but not enough on replacement or disruptive revolutionary innovations. And the reason for this is fairly straightforward. And from a facilities management contract perspective, we can largely talk about a contract having 5 key stages. Now, I'm aware that there are many self-delivery facilities management experts and professionals, of which only steps 3 and 4 would really apply here, but the principles of learning are fairly similar. In an FM contract, we have these 5 stages. The ability to impact results, to make positive improvements within the facility management model really are highest at the beginning, when we're mobilizing a contract, when we're setting ourselves up operationally to deliver over a term. And in FM, that could be anywhere between 3, 5 to 20 plus years. At the start of that relationship, we mobilize, we put the processes, procedures, resources in place that will carry us forward into a steady state service delivery. We go through a period which I call ramp up, or a transition stage, where we move from one theoretical model that's been designed to a new actual operational model to get us to a steady state. And that is the as specified service delivery quality that's been requested that we follow by end users. As we move through steady state, our focus is on really operationally making sure that we're delivering a quality service. And there's less time to really look at innovation. We're just looking at how we deliver our services. And then at the end of the contract, when it's potentially too late, we've set our processes up, our procedures, our ways of working, our culture. It's much harder to make an impact onto the results of FM. And when it gets to contract renewal stage, we really start looking at survival. We look at handing over, exiting the relationship, or trying to renew it. Unfortunately, many FM organizations really look at innovation in a different way. We really look at mobilization being focused on doing what contractually we're bound to do. Innovation is fairly low down. We'll look at normally enhancement, service improvements, but we're not really focused on radically changing how we deliver services. And so our efforts in innovation tend to be fairly low. We're more operationally focused. And we only really get challenged with innovation when we have a conscious request for change, a specific request, we hit a problem, or that when we're getting to this stage, when steady state services are affording us a little bit of time to be able to invest in doing things slightly better. Now, in a contract, FM professionals, a lot of individuals are more skewed towards effort at the end of the contract rather than when they can make the most impact at the beginning. The preference and how we should be doing this is really looking at step changes continuously, a continual focus right the way through the contract, through whatever stage it is, by having resources, tool sets, and a culture of improvement and innovation embedded right from the beginning of the contract. We can have positive, continuous innovation applied right the way through the contract with positive benefits. And if we focus on these areas, let's park just now the organizational marketing and strategic elements. These are areas of our business and organizations that's typically done by specialists, strategists, consultants, many people that are on this call, professionals to the business. We look at the strategic drivers, how we place ourselves as a market, the business models that we use to engage with customers and win more work. Let's instead look at the operational elements of it, because these are largely what we can control day in and day out. Now, it's interesting, I've got a couple of quotes for you here. The author, Wayne Birkin, said that innovation is driven by disgruntled customers, off the scope competitors, rogue employees and fringe suppliers. Often we are not consciously pursuing innovation, but it's driven by these categories. Customers that are disgruntled, that have problems, are forcing us to innovate and change to improve. Competitors who are doing things radically different, we're trying to catch up with. Rogue employees, individuals who felt so inspired to make changes and improvements, they're working out with the system to do things better and more efficiently. And fringe suppliers, professional organisations in the business that are selling into facilities management, technology businesses selling robot security guards. These are driving innovations within our business today. Another great source, and I do apologise for the use of language, but Tom Peters puts it so well, that the source of innovation is pissed off people. People so compelled to do things differently. They're so annoyed and frustrated and concerned about current ways of working that they take it upon themselves to drive change within the industry. And largely, that is what's happening just now in facilities management. But in reality, it should be different. It should be a conscious effort. It should be many individuals working together, bringing different skill sets to tackle challenges, not waiting until they're happening, but proactively looking at the opportunities for improvement and working together to put operational benefits and enhancements in place. Now, I have a second poll, and this is really just a test to make sure that you've been listening and you haven't fallen asleep. So I'm going to ask those here just now, how do you currently deal with innovation within your workplace? Or if you're a single trader, or it's just you within your workplace, how do you observe it largely happening within some of the client organisations that you work with? So take a few seconds and vote. Give me a chance for a drink of water. Okay. Okay, that is very interesting. Very few organisations have part of an embedded system for innovation, and we look at it on a case-by-case basis. Okay, now that's interesting, and actually fairly consistent with what we've found as well. How do we measure innovation within our contracts? 9 out of 10 providers that we speak to and that we're engaged by say they don't have systems in place for measuring the successes of innovations. Instead, they do a number of things. They look at ad hoc innovations, case-by-case innovations. They look at results and they try and improve the results that they get. They copy what the competition are doing, or in some cases they might look at other industries. They look at anecdotal evidence to improve things, or they look at word of mouth, somebody that's done something in another contract they look to replicate. They don't have an integrated system. And partly the reason that we found is because they're scared of innovation. And this grid, which is done by University Professor Tim Castell, some great thinking about innovation, we tend to get intimidated by the principle because the top right here, we look at world-class innovators as exemplars. We look at organizations like Google. We look at organizations like Apple and Facebook. We look at these big companies looking at ways that they drive efficiencies, improvements, and mass purchases and consumer demand within the marketplace. And we tend to look at how well they innovate, and we get a little bit intimidated by it. So our definition of innovation tends to be this big picture innovation. So we look at implementing innovation, and the first time we're looking at the vast comparisons that these big organizations offer us, when in reality we should be looking at small, tiny step changes. We should look at not innovating very much to thinking about innovation, to becoming accidental at it, to having a look at deliberate, and then moving up eventually over time, resource and commitment, and with results as being world-class innovators. An innovation journey needs to be mapped out. So to get from bottom left to top right is a gradual process. And the first step of that is to decide where to innovate. How is your business performing? How is your strategic or how is your operational performance. Do you capture ideas? And we have a model which we call the 4I model for initiating innovation. We look at inspiration offered by other industries. We look at the information within the business, how we can improve KPIs and SLAs, how we can make things better. We look at capturing the innovation of engineers, people on the front line who are tuned in to what end users are looking for. We look at their initiatives, and we look at ways we can take ideas and make them into inventions that really make things better. And this together, a 4I model, is really how we capture it. There's a great story around about this, and I'm conscious we're running a little bit short of time, and I'll try and be very quick with this, but it's a great story. And this is round about the Ferrari Formula One team. Two doctors at Great Ormond Street Hospital were having a particularly bad day in surgery. They were doing a 3-hour whole and heart surgery on a young child, and it wasn't a good day for them. After the operation, which had been unsuccessful, they were sitting down watching television, trying to recuperate, and they were watching the Formula One race. And they witnessed the pit crews servicing the Ferrari racing car, and how quiet they were, how integrated, how collaborative they were, how every single person knew where to go, when to go there. It was choreographed beautifully. And these doctors started talking, what if our operating studios were like that? What if we did things in the same way? So everybody had defined processes. Everybody knew when to talk, when to communicate, where to position themselves, when to interact, when to act. And that's exactly what they did. They brought Ferrari into Great Ormond Street Hospital, and using their engineers, they found new operating methodologies which really inspired them to do things differently. Their success rate has grown tremendously. Now the survival rate of operations is far improved. The stress levels of those operating are far less. The communication is much better. Patients are far more satisfied with the service that they get. By taking inspiration from another industry entirely and applying it to facilities management, we can do the same. But let's do that in small steps. Let's start at bottom left and move gradually up until the top right hand side. There's no hurry, there's no right way, let's just do small bits. And we need to start with a system. We need to start with capturing ideas and innovations. And very simply, this could be going back to a simple suggestion box, an email address where you can send ideas. And you can look at customer engagement newsletters, you can look at questionnaires being distributed via leaflets, whiteboards. There's a great example of an innovation board at Google that engineers had a problem one day with trying to solve a mathematical equation for programming, and the engineer left home out of frustration so he wouldn't forget the next morning, wrote the problem on the whiteboard on the way out. He came in next morning and it had been answered. Somebody had seen the problem and had written the answer underneath it. And ever since then, Google have whiteboards wherever they have in the office, wherever they've got some free space, they put whiteboards in the office and encourage people to collaborate and share knowledge. Simple things. What can we do within facilities management to do that? In some cases, we can be a little bit more structured in how we capture it. We can have more questionnaires, we can have deliberate processes in place. Some of these I'll make available for you. You can download freely, use them in your own contracts if you'd like. Or we can put software solutions in place, and there are many organisations do this, including us. But there are organisations that can put software in that allow you to capture and disseminate information, capture it centrally and look at disseminating it and making a difference. But you have to involve everybody. That's everybody that has any influence whatsoever in facilities management, thinking who that would be. And you have to measure it. You have to continually look at facilities, the performance, the customer satisfaction levels, all of these innovation areas we talked about earlier on, and monitor it to make sure that you're making improvements and changes. Innovation is a journey, and as the saying goes, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It's all of our responsibility to take that first step. There is no right way to do it. You don't need to be stuck on the definition of innovation, it's just making things better. Culture is important, but you really need to start somewhere. So if you pardon expression again, pissed off people, identify who they are and put them in charge of making things better. There isn't a right or a wrong way to innovate, just do it. And most of all, think you already do this stuff. You are already smart, intelligent people occupied in delivering services. Embrace that, capture it and use it. Great example is the Apollo 13 flights. You've probably all seen the film. I won't spoil it for you by telling the end of it, but they had a problem on the Apollo 13 rocket in that they needed to produce new filters to take carbon dioxide out of the air, and they didn't have new ones within the rocket. So they had to manufacture from the very few resources that were available. Clever people with a new challenge came up with a way to do that. We can do that within facilities. We just need to identify what the problems are. It's what gets measured gets done. If we can look at measuring service improvement and enhancements, then we can make improvements over time. We can measure the benefits that are delivered and appoint responsible people who will drive your innovation. It's an important role. Don't just tag it on or make everybody some way responsible for it. Everybody has to be engaged and it has to be driven through by leaders at the highest level with representatives at every section of an FM contract. And remember, what works in one contract doesn't work on another. It is different in every single instance. There is no formula for this that can't be repeated. You have to look at the challenges, the culture, the people, the distribution. I've seen one contract with 3 different methods of collecting innovations, all of them effective. One IT-driven, one paper-driven, and the other one deliberately captured by individuals going out and asking questions within the business. Learn from failure and remember what Tom Peters said. Pissed off people are the key to making this happen. So think today how you'll start innovation and how will you know you've made a difference. And remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So thank you very much. I appreciate that I've kind of rabbited on for a long time about innovation. Much of this isn't new to you. You've been doing it for a while. If it's helpful, there are some free resources that you can download at the website that's mentioned there. And if you have any questions, I'm more than delighted to answer them just now, or you can send me them through. On the right-hand side, I've put a lot of contact details. So, Josh, any questions?
Great, thank you. We'll give everyone just a moment. If they have any questions, please type them into the chat box. While we're waiting for that, I do want to let you know that if you want a PDF copy of this PowerPoint, if you go to the handout section on your control panel, it has been uploaded there and you can download it straight to your computer right now. So we'll go ahead and give them a moment. And then like Chris said, also if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to him. His contact information is listed.
Okay.
And can you go to the next slide, Chris?
Of course I can.
There we go. And while we're waiting, we just want to go ahead and let everyone know the upcoming webinar will be a recap of what was learned at World Workplace, and you can just see other events that are coming up. You will get a registration email shortly about the upcoming webinar. And the next slide, please, because I don't see any questions at this time. So FMCC does like to let everyone be aware of the other councils that are out there that you can use as resources. And I want to thank everyone for attending today. And Chris, I want to thank you for a great presentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody.
We have one quick question that did come in. We'll get this through. It says, they have a question about barrier reduction at the sea level. Where do you think that begins?
Sorry, can you repeat that question, please?
Sure. It says, barrier reduction. At what sea level, he's asking what sea level does that begin, the barrier reduction?
I have absolutely no idea what that question is. I do apologise. My understanding is not quite with it this evening. I'm not sure if it's to do with the barriers to innovation, whether it's a spell check.
Yeah, he just typed in, yes, the barrier to the innovation.
There's a huge number. Typically, as FM providers and FM specialists, the biggest challenge that we have is trying to convince other people to invest in an idea. It's a bit about how we perform, how we produce a business case, how we convince somebody that it's worthy of investment. And there's two ways to deal with this. It's round about escalating things and discussing them openly, and we produce a business case for doing that, which you can download at the resource that was on one of the earlier the presentation pages. But making a business case allows you to look at the ins and outs. The second bit is to start small. If you're looking after a large portfolio, experiment first. Do it in one part of a building or one building, and get evidence to show that your idea or innovation works first. Look at reducing the risk of rollout. And if you do it in some small way and provide the evidence in the business case for rolling it out across an entire estate, that is one of the main successful things that we found from changing people's opinions. Strong business case, and start small and experiment. Hopefully that helps.
Excellent, great. I think that's a great note to end it on. I want to thank everyone again, and thank you, Chris. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thanks all.